breaking news.
So I think the biggest story coming out of all of this is that Frankie Kazarian has left AEW. He had requested his release. I think PW Insider said back in November, but he had requested his release. He finished up with AEW. His release was granted, and AEW and Tony Khan, look, they have a relationship with Impact. They're still kind of homies, and it's evident by the fact that not only was Kazarian able to work Impact while he was under contract at AEW, but that they essentially did the same thing with Jonathan Gresham. They allowed Jonathan Gresham kind of out of his contract, and I'm sure there were some conditions on that. The condition being that you're only allowed to go to certain places, and Impact was one of those places. And so, Kazarian, he asked for his release. It was granted following his November match against Impact World Champion Josh Alexander at Overdrive. This is according to PW Insider. And I'm just going to read the quote from PW Insider. It says, "We are told it was a completely amicable situation based around Kazarian wanting to push himself harder as he's getting closer to the latter point of his career. And then at Impact, he had a chance to be more in the mix and that he'd likely be able to get the opportunity to do an AEW, given how massive that company's roster is." The word backstage at the pay-per-view is that Kazarian pretty much told the truth about what happened. So, we'll get into the interview that he cut during the show, and adding that he'd be welcome back in AEW anytime. So, Kazarian, he last was a contracted talent in Impact 7 years ago, and he returned last year, and he did a series of matches. He actually had a really great match with he became the X Division champion. He had a great match with Speedball Bailey at Bound for Glory. He then cashed in his X Division title and for Option C, and he challenged for the title at Overdrive for the Impact World Heavyweight title against Josh Alexander in a great match, man. And I'm really excited about this, and I think this is this huge news? Is this earth-shattering news? Is this anything that's really going to drive Impact, to sell more pay-per-views, to get better ratings? None of those things are going to happen based off of this. Okay, so, but what this does do is it provides Impact another guy who can main event, who could be a champion, who can have great matches, who can cut great promos, which this company needs that. They need more guys like that. He is a name. He is an Impact original. He is an Impact legend. And the guy could still freaking go, man. The guy's still awesome. Hold on, still get coffee for the working, man. It's early. He can still go, and it's awesome. And I'm going to quote my friend BQ over at the Impact Lounge. He said, "Impact needs to cement itself as part of its identity as a place where guys and girls can come to test themselves, to bet on themselves." And that's exactly what Kazarian's doing. AEW's roster is so loaded and so stacked. There was no chance that he was going to get out of, being primarily an AEW dark guy, right? And there's nothing wrong with being an AEW dark guy. You can make good money being an AEW dark guy. And working those dark and Dark Elevation and Rampage shows, and look, you're gonna be seen by more people than you would on Impact, and that's absolutely true. And people don't want to hear that, but that's what it is. AEW is the bigger, more popular company at this point. You're gonna have the opportunity to work in front of bigger crowds and a live audience when you're working those pre-shows and when you're working, Rampage shows and stuff like that. But when you're an artist, you're not ever going to be fulfilled. So if you can go to a smaller company like Impact with a better trajectory to the top, and you can make the same amount of money, which I assume that he is. I don't think that, a guy with family and a guy with kids is not likely to leave money on the table to go to Impact, right? He has a relationship with them more. He knows these people. I get the feeling he's making the same dough that he was in AEW, and we'll see. Maybe that some of that stuff will shake out, and maybe some of that stuff will get released. I don't know. I just get the feeling, and I think that Impact can afford whatever AEW is paying Kazarian. I think they can afford to pay him that same amount of money, especially now that they got a lot of those bigger deals off the books that they had last year. I think they can kind of funnel that over to him. And I feel the same way about Jonathan Gresham. I think they're probably paying Jonathan Gresham the same amount of money. If not, Gresham probably would have just went back to work at AEW if he's going to be taking a significant pay cut. I think he would have just went back and ate shit for a little while. But he's not. He's here. He's here in Impact, and I think he's a great signing. And when we had the hemorrhaging, right, of talent leaving for on they on no more guys, and the Good Brothers and Chelsea and Mia Yim, and everybody, most of which they all head back to WWE, and then some of them have gone over to Ring of Honor / AEW. We were looking at the free agent landscape, and we were tossing around all these names, Nick Aldis and John Morrison and all these cats. Well, the two names that I never thought of that would be coming over here were Jonathan Gresham and Kazarian, because they were under contract to AEW, and they seem to be under contract for a long time. But they were able to work out a deal. And you know what? And when guys are unhappy in AEW, and if Tony Khan doesn't want them to go to WWE, but that they're not going to be taking any of your business if you were to release them, right? So like, no one's going to stop watching AEW and start watching Impact because Kazarian and Gresham are an Impact. That's just not, like, those guys don't have that kind of sway, right? I mean, now if Omega and Moxley and the Young Bucks and Chris Jericho, like those guys, if they were to do that, well, you might bring over some viewers and they might stick around and continue to watch them. But what we're talking about guys that never really made a significant difference in AEW. If those guys want out of their deal and they want to go to Impact, you absolutely should let them do that. And and I know that there's this like big rivalry with the WWE. And so you don't want to help out WWE, although I don't think either one of those guys would have helped WWE too much. But they have a couple of guys like that right now in AEW that they should really look at. Be like, hey, look, and we talked about it before, and it's Andrade and Miro. And Tony Khan's still paying these guys to not work. If I were Tony Khan, I'd call up Scott D'Amore and be like, hey, man, you want these contracts? They're great talents. They're bigger stars. They want to go back to WWE, and I don't want to let them out of spite. Well, you guys take them. And I think Scott D'Amore should say yes with conditions. Be like, hey, look, I'll take them, but if they start disrupting shit, I'm gonna kick them to the curb, the same as you. But I'm not gonna continue to pay them, so they might end up back in WWE. And if that's the case, that's the case. But and them going to WWE is not gonna hurt AEW, right? And it's not gonna help WWE. It's more of a gamesmanship thing. It's more of a petty thing between Tony Khan and Vince McMahon and Triple H. Like they don't want to be perceived as having anybody get one over on them. So and that is what it is, and that's just the the reality of the wrestling business. But I think that there's two more guys that AEW should really consider doing this with, and that's Miro and Andrade, and both those guys could really help Impact. Get some more viewers. They're not going to take viewers from AEW, but they could get some more of their own viewers. They can get more of a following and sell some more tickets with both those guys. I think that would be cool. But and that's not likely to happen. But it would be fun if it did happen.